Hello everyone and welcome once again for another lesson in Wizardry. Today we have a relatively short lesson. We're going to be covering the two spells that we got from Kublai. We're going to touch upon that page about the Wizarding War once again, or wars. And we're going to cover the journey of Old Father Oak and the Telling Stone that happened so long ago. So we're going to start off with Quake. Cause the ground to tremble and bring enemies to their knees. This spell causes the earth itself to shake, raising both enemies and buildings to the ground. Much like thunderstorm and cloudburst, each quake is in fact a natural blessing, and it is necessary to give thanks when drawing the rune. Note that foolish wizards who take the tumble as a result of their own quake are roundly mocked within the magical community, so do take care. Breaking character for just a moment, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and guess that the reason why Quake wasn't included in, because A, this sounds like ridiculously powerful, B, it's probably also due to the fact that there is no earth element in the game. We do have Stalagmite, and if they did keep this in, Stalagmite is just a physical damage spell, basically like Pulse, so there would be no reason to have Pulse if we had Quake. Unless you have one physical magic spell and one super strong physical magic spell, so, I guess I'm not as upset about this leaving if I think about it like that, but it still bothers me that we don't have Quake, because this sounds amazing! Oh well, anyway, it's time to show you how to draw the Quake rune. Alright, now to start this one, let me make sure positioning is correct, we're going to basically draw an M. I guess you could say it's a crack in the earth too, that works too. And then we follow that up by drawing a flag. So one more time, slowly this time. We draw an M and a flag. And now, rapidly. Alright, now we move on to our second and final spell for the day. And our final spell for the day is Seek Fortune. Mark your map with the locations of hidden treasure. This spell makes it easy for wizards to locate treasure in the vast expanse that lie outside the city walls. Used in conjunction with Chart Chest, it ensures that no treasure chest remains hidden for long. Though it is an extremely useful spell, those who reap its benefits are urged to use their newfound riches wisely. So, brief touch on this in our lesson. Yes, this spell actually reveals treasure chests that are completely invisible on the overworld. So I bet you can guess what we're going to be doing in the next episode after this. If you guessed we're going to fly around all the various continents that we've been to, use the spell and get every single treasure chest on the map, you're correct! You get a gold star for the day. And what the hell, I'll give out a check plus too. Why not? Alright, but without further ado, I'm going to show you how to draw Seek Fortune so that you too can find invisible treasure chests throughout the world. Alright, now, this spell, I guess we'll, start roughly around there. And you're basically going to draw part of an arrow, stopping before we come back in to draw the bottom of the arrow, which would be right there. Then after that, near, I'd say roughly the middle of the arrow, well, before the arrowhead of course, we draw a hill. So I'll do that one more time just to make sure that everyone's on the same page here, before we go into the slow and rapid. So we start out drawing an arrow, stop here, and then a hill. And now slowly. Okay, so like this, and our hill, and now rapidly. Alright, and that does it for our spells for the day. We now move on to learn more about the page that has the picture of the Wizarding Wars. So I could just touch a little bit on more detail with this. I'll be right back in just a moment. Alright, and here we are once again. You may be wondering why I brought us here. I just want to touch upon the things that I brought up in that episode, and we're going to be using this soon. So I figured I would show it one more time just to make things clear. Now when Horace asked us how many Automata family members are on this page, he meant actually on the page, not in the videos, as I said. So let's count that just to be sure, because if I remember correctly, I checked this a little while ago, and it was actually wrong and there's 4, but maybe I missed something. So let's look while on screen and make me look like a dummy if that's the case. So let's zoom in. That's 1 over there, the cog one, which name I totally remember, but, you know, I'm checking your comprehension of the names. Over down here, we have a Tin Man. That makes 2. Okay. Don't be tricked by the Rabot over there. It is actually the Minima family. If you look all the way down there, there's the, oops, the video just covered it. That's the Porco Rosso, so that gives us 4. Oh, hey, there's another one. I guess that makes 5. Never mind, there is 5. I just didn't notice this little guy over here. I don't know if we've even seen that. Bizarre! I'll just take one quick look around. Nope, that seems to be everything. Alright, now let's cover the actual creatures that are going to show up here in the actual videos that show up when you zoom in. We're going to start with the Shooting Star of David right there. If we zoom in, we see a familiar that we have yet to cover, that I'm not going to cover in this episode, or this lesson. I'll be covering in the actual Let's Play, the Dinoceros. If you're unfamiliar where this area is, these are on the Genie Steps, those hills that are near, well, not near, they're in the Shimmering Sands, near Alma Moon, the Temple of Trials, that general region. They're technically the north and south areas of the Shimmering Sands, where the Shimmering Sands meets where Castaway Cove is, and where the Golden Grove meets the Shimmering Sands. On those upper areas, you can encounter Dinoceros, but it is the rarest encounter there. You're going to be walking around probably for a little while unless you get really, really lucky. I'll go into more detail about this familiar at a later date. I'm just letting you know that's where it's found, that's where we're going over it, and this is where you see its general location. Now let's move on to our next one. Let's see, where art thou? Ah, here we go. Now this next one on here we won't be able to encounter for quite some time. Even though we have Tengri the Dragon, who will be able to take us basically anywhere, there's one area that he cannot take us to yet. And that is where this current familiar is located. We'll cover it at a later date, when the time arises, of course. But for now, we have no idea where that one is. Next we move on over here, to where we've already discussed the Lumberwood is on the No Longer Mine. These videos basically just give you a good comprehension of where exactly these familiars are. This is more of a refresher than it is something new being introduced to you, but I want to make sure everyone's on the same page if you wanted to get one of these familiars for your party. Okay, where are we going next? Ah, yes! Where is... Ah, right here, I believe. Now, this area you might not exactly recognize right away. It's not an area we can get to land ever, much like the Genie Steps. This area doesn't necessarily have a name, but it is in the Barrens near Skull Mountain. It's roughly... where do I have it written? About southeast of Skull Mountain. And this is where you can find the Dinky. Look out for that waterfall and the forests that are nearby it, and once this gets to that point where we see the Dinky, we'll be able to see right where it is. There you are! So now you know exactly where you can find Dinky. And the last one we already know where it is, but hey, might as well. The Ugly Duckling Isle where Toko is. Technically we could get to Toko once we got our boat, but you can also get there a lot faster now that we have Tengri. And that's all I really needed to cover about this page in particular. With all that said and done, we now move on to our story, The Tree and the Stone. I will be right back in just a moment. The 11th Tale, The Tree and the Stone. The greatest tree in the deep, dark wood. The deep, dark wood is a dense green forest, located in the northern part of the continent now known as the Summerlands. Though there are some beautiful crystal-clear waterfalls and other sites of minor interest, the travelers mainly flock to the deep dark wood on account of the great tree known as Old Father Oak. Princes and paupers alike have long visited this tree in the hopes of gleaning some understanding from him. For Old Father Oak's great wisdom and benevolence have led men to consider him the world's elder, though no such title officially exists. The Young Tree's Journey. There was nothing unusual about the tree that became known as Old Father Oak when his first green shoots emerged from the ground, many centuries ago. The tree grew as all trees grow, year on year, his branches reaching upwards in search of sunlight, and his roots thrusting downward in search of water. One day, when he was still but a young sapling, he was dug up by a group of humans, and a large stone was placed beneath him, just below his roots. And he was then replanted on top of the stone, and the hole around him refilled with soil. And the humans recited an incantation and drew a rune, and when this ceremony was over, retreated from the forest. Now, the presence of the stone made life difficult for the young tree. No matter how hard he tried to stretch his roots, the stone meant that they simply could not reach any further into the ground. After several days of trying, the tree was about to give up, when all of a sudden the stone started speaking to him. "Tell me, what can you see up there? Pray, tell me what you can see. For I am no ordinary rock. One day I shall become a magical stone, a great and very important one." The tree was a little surprised to hear the stone talking to him so casually, and not a little vexed. "And why should I tell you anything? You do nothing but get in the way of my roots." The tree uttered these words much to his own surprise, for he had never been able to speak before. And so the stone began explaining his situation to the tree. It appeared that in order for the stone to become a magic stone, he had to be placed beneath the roots of a tree, and enchanted in a special ceremony. And so, as the tree grew older and wiser, he would impart some of his wisdom into the stone, and allow the stone's own magical power to develop. The tree's ability to talk was simply one of the things he had learned as he had grown, and the stone had learned this from the tree. Armed with his newfound talent, the tree began talking to the birds and the fairies and other forest creatures, and upon hearing their tales of the outside world, developed an insatiable desire to travel, to leave the spot which he was rooted. And so he began pulling at his roots until cracks appeared in the ground. He kept pulling day after day, unable to stop or be stopped until... Eventually, the inevitable happened, and with a great creaking sound, the tree wrenched himself and his short roots out of the ground altogether. It was at this moment that the young tree discovered that he knew how to walk, and so resolved to leave the deep dark wood immediately and make for pastures new. The stone felt very sad to see his only friend in the world prepare to leave, and said, "Promise that you'll come back and see me sometime, won't you, young tree? I should like nothing more than to hear all about your travels." "Of course, I shall come back to see you. I promise." And so the tree set off on his journey. He felt sorry for the stone, who would now never become the magic stone he so wanted to be. But he knew that he had to follow his own dreams. The young tree's journey allowed him to acquire great wisdom. Every time he encountered perils or monsters, he would simply stand stock still and pretend to be an ordinary tree. Should a predator come sniffing, the young tree would wait until it was very close before rustling his branches violently, giving the creature a terrible fright, and sending it scuttling away in fear. The promise to the stone. The tree's journey continued through storms and blizzards, into dank black caves and across deep blue oceans. On the way, he would sometimes meet other trees on journeys of their own. Most of the trees he encountered had also been chosen as locations for burying magical stones, and they too had left their stones behind and set out on their own adventures. He also encountered trees that were broken or withered, having become lost in the desert, or trapped in great snowfalls. One day, several months into his journey, the young tree realized that it was becoming more and more difficult for him to move. No matter how much fresh water he drank, or how pleasant the sun felt upon his leaves, he was becoming slower and slower. "This must be what happened to all those dead trees I saw," the tree thought. "And that's what's going to happen to me." Suddenly, the tree remembered the promise he had made to the stone back in the deep dark wood. his promise to return to the forest and tell the stone all about his travels. The young tree had not visited the stone once since that day. Indeed, he'd completely forgotten about him. I should go back, he thought. I should return and speak to the stone while I still have strength enough to move. And so the tree set off home, back to the deep dark wood. The tree's short roots were dragging behind him, all the way, trying to get him to stop. But the tree ignored them, and eventually made his way back to the forest where he first sprouted from the ground. The sight of his old stone companion, however, gave him a real shock. Having failed to become magical, the stone had been mistaken for an ordinary rock, and most of him had been chipped off and carried away to make tools and other objects. Only a tiny piece of him remained. Undeterred, the young tree proceeded to recount all his traveling stories, and the little stone listened to every one in silent wonder. What happened next? When the tree had finished telling the stone the last of his tales, he thought to himself, "Now that I've fulfilled my promise to the stone, I shall not mind if I wither and die where I stand." Curiously, however, the tree noticed that he was feeling far healthier than he had for a long while. It turned out that much as the stone's ability to talk had come from the tree's ability to walk had come from being near the stone. And as he spent more and more time away from the stone, the tree had started to lose this power. He now understood that the unfortunate dead trees he had seen on his travels had lost the power of movement on account of neglecting to visit their stone companions. The tiny stone and the tree, who was no longer very young, formed a firm alliance, and became inseparable friends. Indeed, the tree placed the stone into a hollow in his trunk, allowing him to share his knowledge and wisdom. The two would occasionally go on journeys together, acquiring even greater experience and wisdom. For it turns out that while the stone had not become magical during the tree's long absence, he had become very knowledgeable. As the years went by, the tree and the stone garnered great repute for their surpassing wisdom, becoming known as Old Father Oak and the Telling Stone, respectively. Indeed, to this day, travelers still venture into the deep dark woods, seeking advice from the most unlikely pairing of tree and stone. And so ends this branch of the story of Old Father Oak and the Telling Stone. Alright, and now we know exactly how Old Father Oak and the Telling Stone's journeys went. I mean, we only really know about Old Father Oak's journey and then the Telling Stone joining him later, but still, very interesting story. But with that, we end our lesson for the day. Remember to study